Hello and welcome to my final 3D video for the time being on the Nintendo DS. So in this video I will show you how to animate 3D models in a more useful way. I would kind of say it's similar to using like bones and stuff like that, but it's more like a hierarchy or tree structure. But anyway, I'll go over all of that once I cover how to sort of create and export them. So let's get into it. So what I'm going to cover today is where we can get models to test which have already been built. You can use these as either like a placeholder in your game, or maybe so you can see how a particular model in a game was created that you like, or maybe just use parts of that model. For example, maybe you want to use a model's body or arm or hand in your own or something. Sometimes it's easier just to look at what's already there or already been created and uploaded, and use that as like a base for your own. And then I'll go into fixing those models in Blender, because there will always be some issue with them, unfortunately. I've no idea how people actually rip these models out of these games, but for us to use them we obviously need them in a nice to use format, which for us will be the OBJ model format. Loads of the downloaded models, you won't know beforehand, before you download it and have a look, what model format they use. Ultimately we will need them to be in the OBJ format, as that's the only format we can work with converting to the mesh format, which the DS uses. I've no idea what format they actually used in commercial games. So then I'll go over the sort of structure we need to consider with our models or our actors. The actor I'll be using to animate today will be the penguin character here from Mario Kart series, as I thought it'd be a recognisable character to use and a fun one to use as well. So the parts that the penguin here, so we have a head, a body, 2 arms and 2 feet. As you'll see when we look at it in a bit, the feet, each foot is basically identical, so we don't need to export a left and a right foot for our penguin. We will need a left and a right arm, although you could get away with just one arm and then mirror it, but that's extra stuff you would need to sort of pass when you reconstruct the penguin character. Not impossible, but it's all sort of extra hassle, so I haven't done it in this video and with this model. So to animate this one we would need something which holds each of these parts. We make sure our character is built of pieces, pretty much. Think of like a Lego man. You could take his arms off. Obviously you can't take you can take his whole torso off, but his head and everything else kind of comes apart, and then you put it all back into a certain place to reconstruct the whole of the Lego man. So that'll be the case with our penguin here. The head will be one animation part, the left arm will be one, the right arm will be one, the body will be one, and each foot will be an animation part. Depending on how complex the model is you want to animate, you might need more than 6 parts, but then that's easy to do when I jump into the code and you see it, how it's been kind of laid out. I will only be sort of covering the 6-part version here, as our Penguin only has 6 parts. So then I'll go into the animation sort of a structure here, and then how we sort of can create our sort of animations, and then how we can play them back, which is the important bit. We want something that's fairly straightforward, and I think that the animation mesh manager which I've created does that fine, as it works on pretty much anything. I already have a working version of it for the desktop, which I actually converted for this video back to the DS. I'm not sure whether I actually finished it on the DS before, like. So another quick reminder here, so rotations in 3D space, and then in OpenGL the minus Z-axis goes away from you, plus Z-axis comes towards and out the screen towards you. Positive X-axis goes to the right, negative X-axis goes to the left. Positive Y is up, negative Y is down. Unfortunately, these will not be the case when we go into Blender, so you'll have to kind of bear that in mind. And then when you export your model from Blender, you'll want to kind of rotate it away from you before you export it, as I will cover when we get in there. So a bit about finding the models. So there are plenty of places online where you can get free 3D models. However, most will probably not be very good to use for the DS, purely because of the amount of detail that modern 3D models have in them, and there's also potentially a load of different baggage in that model as well. Plus the format might not be one that you can actually load. Some 3D formats have been refined numerous times over the years, and there's no real way to know what version you are actually trying to open beforehand. So it could be that you find a model which uses an old version of, say, the FBX format or something, or even the DirectX format. There used to be one, I don't know if there still is, but there was versions for like DirectX 8, DirectX 9. So various improvements were kind of made to it over the times. Some of it might not be usable in more modern renderers like Blender, if there's even an importer for it in the first place. I haven't actually checked. This was just a model which I used to muck around with ages ago, like. So another thing to bear in mind as well is you kind of want to make sure you get a model which uses just one texture for all of its skin. This isn't actually the case with a penguin, so what I had to do was to join the two textures together. The beak was in its own the beak was with the feet and the body in its own image, and the head was in a separate image. So I had to combine those two images together into one, and then just kind of retexture map the penguin, it was just a case of reorientating the mesh parts to the new image areas where the faces should pick up the correct texture parts. I'll show all that in a moment anyway. So yeah, and also bear in mind as well, the depending on what model you use, the texture might be in the wrong sort of format for the DS as well. So to be on the safe side, you're probably better off trying to find models which are for the actual DS, PlayStation 1, Saturn and N64. Those sort of systems are kind of on the same sort of ballpark when it comes to 3D, I would imagine. So 3D models for the N64, Saturn or PlayStation should probably be fine for the DS. Not so sure about the 3DS. So yeah, I already said about using the 3D models for like a base for you to build off of yourself. So like I said, most models will need work to fix. Said about the penguin character here, so I don't think there's any more we need on here. So let's quit that. So if you go to the Spriters resource, there you go, you'll see at the top here there are a number of other links and sites that they actually host here. So the one we're interested in today is models. So if you go on there, and then if you go to the DS, now I'm not sure whether I got him from Mario 64 or Mario Kart DS. Let's jump in here. Yeah, here he is. I didn't use this one. I did use this one. So if you click on one of these, like, and you'll see it pretty much exactly the same. And then if you just click on the image here, and then download that one. So I'm just doing this as a just to show you where I sort of got the penguin character from, and then I'll show you what work it needs doing to it. So by all means, check out a load of these. Bear in mind, doesn't say what format this is in before you get it. Like, so, and then you would navigate to your downloads. So here's the penguin character here. This is what you get. So you see here we've got two separate images, which is not ideal for us. And then one thing that's good here is this is already in the OBJ format. So once you've done that, fire up Blender. So I've got two versions here. This is the most recent version, so I think I will work in here to show you. So press A to select everything and then X to delete. There we go. Now we want to import our OBJ file. Now hopefully you already have this here, otherwise you might need to go into I think it's preferences, and then you need to go into add-ons, possibly have a look down here. Could be in get extensions possibly. If you don't have OBJ as a default importer, then you'll need to find that to be able to sort of import it. So now we want to import what we've downloaded. I'll have a look around with these here because I think this might make a difference. So when you import it, you'll see it's kind of in one, it looks like it's in one piece, but look how much of the stuff is here. And then if you navigate up to the shading icon here, and then if you press 1 on your number pad here, so for me, if I hold down the shift, if I hold down the middle mouse button, then I can rotate around the penguin character. If you press 1 on the number pad, it will position the virtual camera view pointing directly at the penguin here. So one thing you'll notice here, if you click on parts of him, is he's fragmented into loads of different pieces here, weirdly. So what we need to do is, if we go into flat shading there, I think there's a load of additional bits and pieces in here which is a mess. I had to sort of everything you sort of get, you will have to work to fix, unfortunately. So what we want to do is we need to kind of select all of the triangles that make up his head and then regroup that clump of triangles and then rename it as head. So we'll get into fixing that now. So I would press A to select all, and then if you go into edit model here, and then we want to select faces, and then if you hold down shift and then select lots of these faces here, we kind of need to get the whole head. So you're going to have to kind of move around, get all the parts that make up the head. Make sure you get under the head as well. This is still easier than you creating your own, by the way, unless you've already got a model that you already have. Right, I think we've no, colours aren't that great. I think we've got everything there for the head. So now what we'll do is right click your mouse button and then click on separate by selection. I don't know if it actually did anything then. So one thing you can do is press L, and that should grab everything linked together, although I don't think that's actually making any difference here. So let's try and grab all of that. Go into edit mode, pressing either tab or selecting it here. Press A to select all of that, and then what we want to do is select by vertex, and then if you go into merge vertices by distance, that will remove any duplicates, and then what we want to do is join these together. So we'll triangulate faces, and then think that's the one we want to kind of try and join it together. Still don't look right. Oh, we need to be in outside of it. Okay, so make sure you're not in, come out of edit mode, go into object mode, and then you can select all of that and join it together. As you'll see, loads of these are it's kind of fragmented still. So hide the head and then select all of that. And now we want to try and select all of the body here. I think we've got everything there. Oh no. Don't want that part of the arm. And join that, and then move that out of the way. Now what we'll see is there's some bits and pieces are all over the shop. Looks like the what you will have to do to this to kind of fix it is go into edit mode, and then we'll need to fill in the gaps here. So the easiest way to do that, in fact what we'll do first is select everything, make sure you're on vertices, right click and then merge vertices by distance. You'll see that it removed 53. There's loads of like overlapping geometry which you need to kind of be careful of, and then select some of these vertices here, and we'll need to fill them in with triangles. Be careful because you need to make sure that you've got the right sort of faces there, and then pressing F will fill in these gaps. And then one thing we want to do as well is make sure you've got back face culling on as well. So not all of these faces will be facing the right direction. We need to know where there's an issue here. So I'm pretty sure that face there. So we need the faces to face the right direction. At the moment, when they're facing the wrong direction, the normals are facing away, or rather inside the object, which means that the triangles won't be drawn. So we need to fix that. So what we need to do is we need to recalculate the normals from outside, which it didn't fix. Okay, so let's try that again with that one. Nope, still didn't fix that. There we go. So, in fact, that face doesn't look right. Let's get rid of that face. In fact, we'll get rid of that one as well. And then what we'll do is we'll just we'll rebuild those faces. So select some of the vertices here. It's kind of like a dot to dot, if you've ever done one of those. And then press F. Once you've selected the vertices to fill in the triangles. There we go, until we've got a solidly filled shape. So one thing we can do once we've done that is we can use a mirror modifier in a minute, which I'll show you to do. So I'll rename these as well. So we can hide the body now as well. So now we need to come back and fix the rest of this. So select everything with A, then go into edit mode. And then we will select. So this is actually the right arm here. So make sure you've got everything selected there. And then we'll split that. Sorry, separate that by selection. And then once you've got everything, join that and then rename it. And now you'll see that there's loads of issues with this one here. It looks like we're missing stuff as well. So first off, let's merge vertices by distance. 14 are removed there, so that helps. And then it looks like faces are also mucked up as well. So we want to flip the normals again. Okay, so that's repaired one. So we're still missing a load of stuff here, is that? Yeah, it can be tricky to try and figure out which side right, so we'll go into that there. Oh, don't look like we can use that one. Right, I think that one's filled and fixed now. Just try and go on to triangulate faces just to make sure that everything's right. Sometimes you can fill a face and it might not work because it doesn't triangulate properly, as in all of the parts need to be kind of connecting properly to other geometry there. Not like in that corner there, it doesn't look right. Don't know what's going on there. Let's try and merge my distance again to fix that. Okay, everything seems to be okay. Is that a face inside? That's one thing you have to be careful of as well. It looks like there's a hidden face inside. So Shift and Z toggles wireframe mode. It looks like there's a face inside. Yeah, there is. Pain. It's not letting me select it for some reason. Not sure if there's anything we can do there to fix that. It's acting really buggy. I don't know whether this is because I'm running OBS Studio at the same time or whether it's because it's the new version of Blender and it's got issues with it. Anyway, you kind of need to make sure you get rid of these. Did that do anything? Nope, doesn't look like it. Right, I do not know what the hell this is doing now. It looks like all of this is still separate. Okay, let's try again. I've tried joining everything together there. I think maybe some of it was not classed as being part of the object. There we go, everything's back in place again now. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's fix that by putting another face there. Okay, I think that's that one done there. So we've let's rename that. And then we'll I'll show you a shortcut that we'll do. We'll in a moment. Let's hide the arm, and then we only need 1 foot. So we will rename that. As you can see, it can be quite tedious doing this. I think that's joined it now, so now it's right. We've got the key bits we need now. So let's get rid of all of that. So it still looks like there's stuff left. So where is this? Okay, so we've got our key parts here. So now what we need to do, I don't know why the cursor has changed. Let's rename that to head. Right, so the cursor is at the center, just there. So if we press N, this will bring up our locations thing here. So we need to try and rebuild and reposition everything now. So what you would need to do now is we would need to duplicate that. So Shift and D will do that. And then we need to mirror that on the x-axis. And then move them back. And then we need to duplicate that one as well. So Shift and D, and then G and X to move it on the x-axis. And now it's kind of looking right again. So now what we need to do, so first off, let's rename these. The renaming is important, as now what we need to do is we have to rotate the whole thing. So if we, in fact there's already a modifier on it for some reason, so we need to remove that. So Control and A, apply rotation to clear all of that. We don't want any unnecessary or rotations, as we need to be the ones to control what rotations are on it for when we export it. So now we can rotate it 180 on Z. Okay, so let's first we'll join this, and then we need to set origin to 3D cursor so that it's just there at the bottom of the feet there. Now we can rotate it 180. Now we need to Control and A and apply so that it's not exporting with a rotation on everything. So this should be the norm now. So to work with our model now, what we need to do is number pad 1, So we're facing behind it, and if you hold Control and press 1, we'll now be working in front of it again. Now what we need to do is to split everything apart again, now that it's facing the right direction for when we export it. And now we need to give each part, head, body, arms and feet, their own origin points. So at the moment this whole mesh has an origin just below it, their center. So the reason why the center is usually picked is so that we can, when we import it into the game, we know how to sort of where it's going to be positioned relative to everything else. So we need to separate it all again now. So go into edit mode, press tab and then press L, and it will select a group, and we need to make sure we clear the arm bits there. So we've got the body there, so we can separate that. And then press L. Okay, that's not doing that. Into object mode, select the body, rename that as body. Just double click on that to do that. And then we can hide the body. Sounds wrong. Edit mode, and then we'll want to go through the whole head here. This is probably going to be the longest part of the video doing this, but it's something that kind of you need to kind of see. And for me to explain, so that when you come to do this yourself, it kind of you can kind of get an idea of what's actually involved. So we separate the head again, back into object mode. Now we select the head, rename it as head. Now we can hide the head. And then press an L. And then separate by selection. And then rename that to arm again. L will select that group there. Didn't split it. And then do the same for the feet. Weirdly won't select that group with L for some reason, although it's kind of like an island of parts. Fucking thing. Okay, let's try and flat shade him. Sometimes it's hard to see because of the all the grey colours they randomly chose to use. Okay, I think that's Oops, missing that face now. How irritating. This is really irritating me now. It's not sort of highlighting the other parts there, so I don't know. Finally. Very irritating. Why is there loads of feet now? Just get rid of all this, I can't be arsed with that. And then any other garbage that you have, just get rid of it. We'll duplicate this foot now. So Shift and D, duplicate that, and then G and X to move it across, and then rename that to foot R. Now what we need to do is unhide everything. Double check everything's looking okay. Now what we need to do, reposition the camera in front, make sure the 3D cursor is at the world origin. So cursor to world origin, and now what we need to do is to set the origins for all of these parts, as when we export them we need to know what the offsets are from the origin. So the origin of our model will be directly beneath it here, so you can think of this as being like on the floor, and then the offsets from it will be from the floor. But before we can do any of that, we need to set the center of rotation for every part. And then another thing you'll need to do as well is at the moment, let's turn that off so I don't get any more junk mail while we're filming. So at the moment the penguin head is using, well, we'll come to the file a minute. The penguin head is using two images here. So what you want to do is to merge these two together, and then what you'll end up with then is just like an image like this one here, with the eye at the bottom and then the feet and the bill at the top. Either is good. So I recommend that before you sort of do any of this, save this project somewhere. And then what you want to do is sort of copy these somewhere else. So you'd want to open that with some sort of imaging software like LibreSprite here. And then open the other, and then copy all of that one, go back to the other, change the size here. So as it's already the DS, thankfully all these textures are already powers of 2. And then what we'll do is we'll do something more interesting now. Is we'll change that color to something else. There we go, have our red penguin. And then save that somewhere else. So if we go into, for me, I'll just put this in my pictures folder. Obviously I've already done all this for the penguin before, but you kind of need to see what I did, as this is the main makeup of this video, is this part here. Everything else will kind of be a lot quicker to get done. So now that we've done this, we need to change the texture for all of these first. So if you go into the material properties part in Blender here, and then you'll see that there's 2 materials in here. One is the body and one is the head part. So just get rid of that. You'll see there that the head model had 2 textures applied to it. So we will switch this one out. So navigate to where you have your new image for it, which in my case is there. And now you can see that everything is kind of out of place. So now we need to reposition everything. So select the head, go into edit mode there, make sure you're on faces, select everything, and then go into UV editing. And then we'll need to get a good view of the head in this window here, and then drag this across and then select textures there, and then in this window here for some reason it's not showing our image. Alright, so all we need to do to fix all this is to scale these down. At the moment the scale is for that other image there, so the old image. So what we need to do now is rescale these parts here. So move this back across to the beak. You'll see that the beak overlaps here. So if we G and Y to move that on the Y axis, and now we need to move these. In fact, probably need to scale that on the Y axis actually. So scale and then move. And now that's the beak sorted out. So now let's select the eye region here, and then we just need to scale that. So S to scale, and then G to move that. Not sure why that's okay, need to reassign that region back to the original texture there, and then just move some of this around. So scale that on the x-axis to try and get the eye totally in there. Oh, bloody hell, that's separate from the other one. Okay, so now we need to scale this one down to match the other area, so we can see the other region underneath there. Make sure you're on faces on here. Scale that one down and then move it into place. And go back to the vertices selection here. And then we want to move these so that they're kind of overlapping. Just like that. So that's the eyes sorted there. So then now if we select the rest of it, it might be worth hiding the body. So if you come over onto this again and then you click the eye icon there, that will hide the body. That will allow us to select the rest of the underside of the head. And then one thing you'll see here is that some of the faces are all collapsed on themselves onto like a single point. what we want to do now is just move these. So press G to move it somewhere else on the red area, and then any which you've missed you should be able to see now. So that looks like the head's fine, and the beak. So we can hide the head now, and now we can switch to the feet. So go back to object mode, select the foot, and then go into edit mode, and then press A to select all. And you'll see all we need to do here really is to move this up, so G and Y to move that up, and then if we scale that on the Y axis, and now try and get it kind of like in the center of these sort of parts here. Now you'll see that that's the foot done there. So we could just delete that foot there and then duplicate that one again, which will probably be the easiest way to do it. So if we go into object mode now, and then delete that one, duplicate that one, and then move it back across. We'll only be exporting one foot anyway. Now what we need to do is to do the arms. So go into edit mode, select all, and then this does not look right. We want the underside. In fact, I'm not actually sure whether the original penguin had any white on it at all, but what I did was I selected the inside here, and then we'll hide the other arm because we want to, and then just move your camera so that it's kind of facing directly at you, and then right click and then unwrap faces, and then project from view. And then what this will do is, what you see here, it will unwrap those faces as you see them there, which is a nice quick way to get texture mapping done. And then we'll scale that on the Y axis. So you kind of have it white underneath, and then the sort of normal sort of feather colour on the outside. Doesn't need to be exact. It's whatever you kind of, how you want yours to kind of look. So we've got that arm there. I won't bother doing the other arm, like, this is just for demonstration purposes here, showing you what I did. I will show you the other version that I have in a moment. So with the body, you can see here that the way things are kind of texture mapped is you select just half of the actual model texture that, then once you're happy, you can use what's called a mirror modifier, where you basically copy one half, mirror it over to the other half. So scale this on the y-axis here, as we don't need to do anything on the x-axis because it's fine. So I'm scaling it on the y-axis and moving it on the y-axis. And then, yeah, there we go. There's your there's the infamous red hot penguin. So now what we would want to do is each of these body parts needs to be set so that it's centered at the origin when we export it. So we kind of need to go through, hide bits and pieces now and set the origin for them. So the head's probably going to be the easiest to start off with. So there we go, select the head, and you'll see that the origin for the head is way down there, which is obviously not useful at all. So you press N, it'll bring up this window here, which will be useful for us. And then what we want to do with our object is right click and then set origin to geometry. Now what this has done, that you'll see, is the center of rotation is now in the very center of the penguin head. If you press 1, you'll see that it's centered in the head there, but we do not want that. We want the origin to be at the very bottom there. So one quick way we can do that is go into edit mode and then go to vertex. And ideally what we need is we need the 3D cursor to select one of these at the bottom here. So select cursor to selected, and then go back to object mode and then set origin to 3D cursor. Now what we've done is we're using one of these points or vertexes on the bottom of the head to allow us to get to the center. So now what we're going to do is go on to snap and then put cursor to world origin. Now what we can do is if we set Z to 0 on the head will now come down directly center over our cursor. So now what we need to do is set our origin back to the 3D cursor again, and now the head's origin is centered at the very bottom of it. So now if we would rotate the head on the x-axis, and then rotate it around there. You'll see that we can now manipulate this individually in a useful manner. So what we would do now is we need to reposition that where we want it to sit on the body. So we'll position that there for now. And now what we need to do is we need to do the same sort of thing for all of the other body parts. So for the body, I would say we need to move it down, maybe position the center just between the legs. So if you move the body down, say to about there, and then set origin to 3D cursor, there you go. And then move this one back up, G and Z. So you'll see there the origin is now right underneath the body there. And now you would do the same for the other things now. So with the foot, we'll hide the body. So you'll see that the that's totally useless there. The origin for the foot is outside of it. So set the origin to the geometry again, and then reposition the camera, and you'll see that it's kind of centered to some degree. So we can just reset the X location to 0, and then if we move the foot down so that the top of it is just centered above the cursor there. There is fine. Now set the origin to 3D cursor again. And if you zoom out now, you'll see that in fact we need to move that on the Y axis here to there. Now we can set the origin to the 3D cursor. So the reason why we did that is so that when we rotate our foot around, it's as if it's the sort of correct pivot point that we need for it to be sort of connected to the body. So we then need to reposition this foot here. So all of this will need to be repositioned really. I say that's probably the default sort of offset in the body. Now what we need to do is the arms. So let's hide the body. So we'll reposition that to geometry again. So now what we want to do is move the arm so the cursor is kind of centered around that point there. So we'll hide the head. An easy thing to do here is to go into edit mode again, and then we'll select that vertex there. We'll snap the cursor to it, so cursor to selected. We then have to come back to object mode, we'll then set origin to 3D cursor. And then this will act like our shoulder here. So now if we rotate that, so if we rotate that on the x-axis, we can move the arm forward and back. So as I've said before, the Z and the Y axis are flipped in Blender. When we export everything, that's one thing to kind of bear in mind. So you would do that for the other arm as well. And then what you end up with is we have all of our origins mapped for all of our body parts. So now what I'll do is I'll switch over to my fixed up version of the penguin, and then I'll go through the rest of the details there. Otherwise I'll have to spend time fixing all this up here. All you would do now is you kind of need to clean up the offsets where everything joins together. Okay, so now we are in my fixed up version here. So you'll see that I've done exactly the same for each of the body parts here. Slightly different. You'll see the arms, their origins are slightly different, but so is the body here. But the key thing is what I was showing you there is exactly the same. So now what you need to do is need to fix up the offsets so they're only like a couple digits there. So you've got like only like 2 decimal places, say, for the arms and the legs, and then have it ideally so they're kind of mirrored over the center of rotation for your model here. So what you'll want to do is to get a text file, and then you want to make a list of the body parts and their offsets on the X, Y and Z axis. So if we go to the head, so as I said, the Y and the Z axis are flipped. So for everything where it says Z, you record it as Y in your text document. And then you want to note the offsets from the origin, as we need to replicate the positioning of each of these body parts for when we redraw them on the DS, which is why all of these centers of rotation are important. So go ahead and do all that for your different parts, and you'll end up with something like this here. And then what we need to do is we will be creating animation frames, and how we'll be doing that is we'll be recording the rotation ranges. So for that, for example, the default resting state here would be everything at 0. And when you move around your body parts, there shouldn't be any rotations on any of them here. And the scale should be at 1 for everything as well. Now for rotating our character, so say we want a walk animation, So we'll move them around to the side here, and then you might want the arm. So we're going to be like just creating like a pose here, and then the animations will just be based on rotations. You could obviously put offsets in as well if you wanted to rotate as well as move an individual limb, but you would need another array for that. I'll explain this in a moment. So most of the time it's going to be on the x-axis here. So say you want his right arm to be going back to -28, then the other arm will probably be +28. And then you want 1 foot there, so we'll say maybe that's 28. And then maybe that's -28. Or it'll probably be shallower because it's going back. So we've got one pose there. So now what you would need to make note of, going around them all, is the rotations here. So now what you would record is so you would do the same for the body parts again here, except you're not recording offsets this time, you're recording angles of rotation. So for the right arm here, we would just record -28 on the x-axis. Nope, but I have done that for the head. Obviously that's the arm. And then we know that it's the opposite for the other arm. So these 3 rotation numbers here will be for X, Y and Z. So then, excuse me, on the right foot there, on the x-axis we record 28 and then 0, 0 for the others. And then we know that's -23 for the other foot. And then we'll rotate the head as well, just for good measure here. So yeah, why not? Why not? There we go. He's rotating his head to the side there. So also bear in mind that that's the actual. This is the z-axis, not the y-axis when we export this. So nothing there, and then 27 there. So this would be one pose in our animation sequence. So we then need to copy this again for our next. So maybe the head now rotates the opposite way. And then there's no rotation for the body here, so I haven't done any rotation numbers for the body either. So then for the opposite pose here, so if it was 28 there, then chances are the opposite for that would be -28. So we're flipping that around. And then we would just make note of these numbers here now. So as everything is kind of symmetrical, we know what to expect. And then there's also another frame where everything would be at 0, and that would be the kind of like resting or the default idle pose. So then what we have here is we have 3 extreme poses. So this would then make up like a walk frame. I have got ahead of myself there, so let's rotate these back to 0, as we need to export all of these first. Doesn't really matter what order you do everything in. Okay, so this is the default sort of pose for him here. So once we've got everything all done that we need to do, now we need to export our mesh parts. So the way to do that is select a mesh and then put the location at 0, 0, 0, and then export that part. So you have selection only. You should have everything triangulated already. Don't need to export the materials. And then you would just call that penguin head, and then you would export that. And then you go and do the same for everything else. So we'll put the head back to where it was, and then put the body at 0, 0, 0. And then export that, and then export each of the arms, but only export 1 foot. Now if you wanted loads of different animations for your character, then now's the time to do it, but you only need to pose them in the end sort of position of that. So for example, if he was going to fall over here, then you would only need to export the end sort of frame. Right, what axis is it? Nope, not that one. So maybe that's like a die-in frame or something like that. So now what you would have is we would then need to record these numbers for everything. So we've got 60 on the x-axis there. Nothing on the body. The right arm has, let's just call that -70. Round that up to simple numbers there. So the right arm has, let's have a look, what was that? 145, and then also remember that the Z and the Y are flipped. So chances are the left arm will be exactly the same, except the X axis will probably be a negative. Let's try that. Oh no, it's positive as well, okay. The y-axis is now flipped. And so is the z-axis. Okay, so where are we? So that's the same, but they're now positive. So again, make sure you flip the x and the sorry, the Z and the Y over. So let's go to the feet now. So on the right foot there, so let's just call that 8. And then minus 64, minus 85. And then so that's 8 minus 64 minus 85. Of course, they don't need to be symmetrical. I'm just doing that to so minus. Okay, so the X, Y, and Z. In fact, I need to almost mucked up there, so that these need to be flipped over the opposite way around. Okay, and then once you've got these, save that. Up to you whether you want to leave them in that pose. Don't think there's anything else we really need to do here now. I'll save this anyway. So now we've exported our mesh parts. We've got our offsets for our animations. So now what you would do is, using my OBJ program from the other video, you would use that now to convert each part into its corresponding text file. So I'll quickly show you. To go any further, you will have needed to download this program here, the OBJ converter, which I went into detail in the other video. And then what you need to do is navigate to where you exported your OBJ parts. Bring the windows side by side, and then you just dragging over bits and pieces that you need. So one of the things I found was when I sort of created the left arm last time, I didn't fix the normals, and then when I went to animate it, there was parts missing. So any issues, you'll just have to fix the model part in Blender and then export it as an OBJ and then convert it again. So this is all I did here was I selected as a sort of text file, and then once you've done all that, you then need to import all this stuff here. So you see here, all I've created is an array of floats for all this stuff here. So you want an array for your offsets, and then you also want an array for your rotations for the right arm, the left arm, left foot, right foot. So each of these things here, you can think of these as like an end pose. And then what the animation code, which I'll show you in a moment, does is it blends between one frame's rotation and the next frame's rotation in a value between 0 and 1. So at 0, all of the rotations from the first frame will be displayed on that mesh part. When the animation value or the blend value is at 1, the end frame rotation will be in full. The code basically blends between 2 frames, which is why you just need to make sure that you record the end poses of each part of the animation. And then these lists here are for each of the sort of like end frame parts. So what we can do now is with our die-in pose here, I'll put those in and show you how simple it can be to get all this going on. In theory anyway. So all I'll do is I will add in 1 extra frame, which will be the die-in pose. You'll see that I've not bothered putting anything in for the body, as we don't really want to sort of rotate any of that. So there's no need to include extra data we don't need. So if I come to the arm, so look what we got. We got 145, 160 and 70. And then for the right arm, 145 minus 160 and minus 70. And then for the left foot, 8, 85 and 64. And then 8 minus 85 and minus 64. So for each actor you want to put in the game, you'll need the offsets for each body part, and then you'll need like a list of rotations that each body part needs to go through for a given sort of animation. So you'll see in here we've included the 00s for everything. This is kind of the at rest. And then what you would do is you would kind of create like a key list. So if I go into the Penguin Manager here, you'll see we have a walk animation here. And then what we'll also do here is we'll put in keyframe 3 at the end. Now keyframe 3, which in reality is actually the 4th one, if you look here, you see we have the 3 there for the walking, and now we have a new frame, which will be the die-in pose. And then now what I need to I've not figured out how I'm going to do this yet to get that to work. Let's just pass it a mode. So if b die is false, then we'll do that. Else. we need to sort of prep the animation frame. In fact, what I'll do is I'll show you the program running first before I start doing stuff which could break it. So let's open it up here. So I've created a simple sort of a scene here with a load of penguins in, flapping and turning around. So you can see the power of the animation thing here, like. And I've added in some sounds for good measure as well. And then I also created like a second texture as well. And then also, if you notice on the that Spriters resource page as well, there was one called there was like a sounds resource as well. And then I got the penguin sound from Mario Kart 64. So that's that working in action there. So first off, I'll quickly show you the structure to hold all of that. It's fairly straightforward. So what we have is we have a structure for each part of our model. So we have one of these for the head, one of these for the body, the arms, the feet. Each part has its own list. And then we need the offset from the origin of the model as a whole, which is why we have these here. And also why the origins of each part was centered over 0 before we exported them. And then we have a rotation, which is currently how it is rotated away from its parent. And then this here is the list of rotations that it will go through. So these angles here are kind of like the end point of each animation frame. And then as we have 6 parts, our anim model 6. So if you had more than 6 parts, you could change that number there, maybe create like another structure to hold that, or you could just dynamically allocate these as you needed. I wanted to keep it simple, so I didn't do that. So this structure here is like the parent or the container for all of the anim parts here. If you think of like a tree or like a bone model animation, this is kind of doing that here. And then there should be just one texture for the whole model. Although you could put different textures for different parts, I suppose. The anim model 6 contains no mesh at all. Only the parts contain the mesh ID. Which is why when you sort of come down here, you'll see we have each part of the penguin has its own mesh. We have one for each arm, but not one for the foot, because the foot is symmetrical, whereas the arm isn't. The arm needs to be kind of like mirrored to get that going. And then the way we are animating is using a function called lerp, or linear interpolation. And what that does is it blends 2 values together based on a strength value, if you like. So what we work out is the difference between the two first, and then how much to use from one rotation to the next, if that makes sense. The position, rotation and the scale here are globally for our actor. So each part has its sub-rotation, if you like, or its local rotation around its own local axis, whereas these in here are for the global thing as a whole. So to start off with, what you have to do so I created like a penguin structure here to hold each of them. All that's in that penguin structure is one anim model. All this stuff is just local to the penguin itself, which I thought would be useful. You could just move it around, but I didn't want to put the extra code in to muck around with collision detection and all of that. I wanted to purely sort of concentrate on the animation side of things. I'm conscious now that the Blender side of things has took longer than I intended, but I kind of expected that. So getting back to this, we have our keyframes here which refer to just the offset into the arrays of each animation part. So when we initialize one of these anim model 6s, first what you must do is you say how many animation frames you have. We'll add one on there because we've added an extra frame in. And then this here is the scale size of our object. You could obviously put more than just the one value in here. The texture ID. In fact, that needs to go below that one. Actually, I shouldn't move that one. And also a pointer to the offsets array. So you pass it the offsets into this function here. And then all that does is first it sets up its global parts first, which are these. It zeroes the blend value to 0. And then what it does is it loops through all 6 of those parts and then just takes floats from the offset array here. So another thing you need to make sure is these parts are ordered the same. So for example here, head, body, left arm, left foot, right foot. Everything you kind of pass in needs to be ordered around that. So for example, where are we to find where it is? Here you go. So there's an enumeration here for the part IDs. So as you can see, head is 0, body's 1. So this is the order you do things in here when you sort of build things. So once you've created and set up your model using this function here with the offsets, then you need to give each animation part the correct mesh that it needs, and then its animation list. So you'll see here the head takes in the head mesh and then the head rotation. The body, as it has nothing, you just pass, if you've got a part that doesn't take any rotations, then just pass null into that. And then you just feed in, for each body part, you then pass in the mesh that it needs. So come in here, you'll see that the initialize animation part, you pass in the anim6 model, tell it which part ID to assign the details to, and then you pass it the mesh ID and the rotation list. And then the initialization function here, you just pass in which position you want the or where in the world you want the model to be, and then just an integer of what frame to start with. It's probably not needed the frame now, to be honest, but and then the next key thing is the prep function. So in all animations for this, you need to know what frame is the now frame or the current frame, and then you need to know which is the next frame, as everything is going to be blended together here. So what's happening here is we are going through all parts of the model you passed in, and then it's setting up which frames are the current frame and the next frame, and then from the rotation list it's setting the current rotations from whichever frame in each of these lists to use. Then when you call the animation update frame, you specify what the blend speed is. So this is a value between 0 and 1. And what this does here is it uses this vector-free lerp function to blend between the start frame and the end frames vector-free values. As you can see here, start and end, take those two there, pass them in, and then we also pass in the part rotation value, or rather its rotation vector free, because this is where the end result will be put. If that makes sense, which it should do. We're basically just blending between these here. So for example, it would be if these were our two frames, so this was our now frame and this was our next frame, the depending on the blend value you pushed in, if the blend value was 0, the Z rotation would be 15, if it was 1, it would then be 0. So each change in the blend value would blend the Z value in that part between 15 and 0. So that animation update does that for each of the parts connected. And then to finalize all that in the draw function, in scene 3D, to draw one of these, so if I come down to the draw command here, so this draw here, all it's doing is it's calling the draw on the relevant penguin in the list here, and then what the draw function has to do before it draws the model is it has to call draw begin before drawing all of the parts in the model, and then it must call draw end afterwards. And the reason for that is we are using the matrix commands to allow us to kind of compound upon the original sort of position here. So the draw begin command, that takes the texture from our anim model, binds that, it then pushes the model matrix onto the draw stack before we translate into the position in the world for our model. And then we have our model's rotation right there. And then every part we draw, we push this matrix first down, so that when we translate, rotate and scale, we are doing it off of the sort of center point here. And then we push, or rather we pop our matrix back off for the child part. And then we do that over and over again for each part. And then at the end we must pop off the starting position matrix for our model. There's a lot to sort of take in there, but that's how it all kind of works. So the other function to kind of show you here is what's actually happening here. So we have a blend value, so we have a start and a stop, and then this value here is the value which is exported with the results of these. So what we record is the difference between the stop value minus the start value, and then that difference is then multiplied by the blend value. It is then added to the start value and then put in the destination. And that is what allows us to blend between the two ranges of the rotations. So that's all that I really want to cover in this video here, but now what I want to show you is how we can get that penguin to do the die animation. I kind of wanted to show how we can add more animations to it. So one thing you could do is you could add it at the end here, or you could just have it as a separate thing, where that might be easier actually. We add in like a penguin state. So I'm just trying to quickly bung this in so I can kind of show you how you can quickly do that. Because what we need to do now. So when we initialize here, the penguin state will be at 0. This is breaking. Yeah, I think the state is going to be the easiest way to do it here. So animate. So we'll add in this here. So what will happen is, if we set the penguin state to 1, then that will initialize the die animation. We'll take into account whatever frame the penguin is currently at. And then the next frame will be the die animation frame. But you need to do it only on the once the anim update is completed. So if I show you what that is, so you pass in the blend speed there, and then it updates internally the model blend value. If that model blend value is greater than 1, then it sets it to 1, and it returns true that you've reached the end frame of the 2 frames you passed in. Whenever you call prep, it resets the blend value to 0, and it sets the new frame now and frame next ID. So if penguin state is smaller than 1, then it will do that normally. Otherwise, and then in fact, we probably want to do that outside of here. No, we don't want to do that inside of here. So next frame will be 4, and then the now frame will be whatever the current penguin's next frame is, which should already be but it won't be that. Okay. Let's take that away from there. Put that in there. And then what we can do instead is we can just pass the now frame in. And the reason for this is the this frame here will have been set previously here before. So we don't need any of that in here, so right, let's just double check that. Okay, what is this? So let's have it. You press A and then didn't put any commas in there. I think that's everything. Let's double check. Okay, that appears to be fine. Let's hope all this works. Okay, everything's fine. Okay, I've obviously screwed up there. They've all died, but they've animated to the wrong frame, maybe? Is this a walk frame I've done here? Is that the right one I've passed in? So it should be there. Ah, it's because it's in the wrong bit. No, it's not. Okay, so next frame is 4. Ah, wait, no, I'm guessing it's because smaller than 3, possibly. So it already comes through. So it's 1 when it's in there. Then it becomes 2 there. Okay, I think that might be it. I should have not tried this, I think. Okay, that's stopped everything, and he's just gone back to being at the normal pose for some reason. That's 3 there. Next frame is 4. Have I actually loaded in the right amount? Obviously not doing something right there. Okay, maybe that's... My apologies, I should have done this beforehand, but seeing as I'm here now, I don't really want to be stopping everything. Okay, that just appears to pause everything. Right, I'm obviously going to need to pause the video and then sort this out, and then I'll be back. Okay, I figured out what I was doing wrong now. So first off, I'll show you it actually working now. So there they are, bumping around. So if I press the A key, they will throw their arms up now. There you go. And then they'll stop moving. So the problem was because I was trying to do this inside of the animate loop for just one penguin. So what was happening was I was changing it for just one of the penguins here, but it was in a loop. So what would happen is it would then go to all the others and then stop animating them. So only one penguin was actually moving slightly. So this is kind of like a hack way which I did it to kind of just show the one frame state. The way you would kind of do it is you would change the state of your actor, and then you'll need to sort of handle things better than I sort of did here. This is just to kind of show you quickly how you can get multiple animations going, and how easy it is just to drop in an extra keyframe which I showed you. So this is easily expandable here. Just add in some more parts if you need more parts. And then animation frames are literally just so another thing I forgot as well is I didn't add an extra one onto the size of this array here either. I could have just left it a dynamic array and not put a size in there. So what I needed to do was add in some other bits and pieces like a penguin state. That doesn't even need to be there. Yeah, so all I did, if your state was penguin state 0, and it just animates as normal. If the state 1 is triggered, then it will literally take this frame here as the end frame, and it will force the current frame to be 1. And then because this is just to animate one penguin out of the array, because you pass in an ID here, this is not updating them all at the same time, only one. So I needed to put the state change thing outside of there. So this is just a quick sort of dirty way to get you to see that frame there. So that's it for this video here. Hopefully this long video will give you the opportunity to play around with more complex animations. Right, that's it for this video. Let me know if you've got any questions about this below, and I will answer them when I'm next on. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.